growth hormone, we know that hypothalamus produces the growth hormone releasing hormone, which causes the release of growth hormone from the pituitary. And this is modulated via somatostatin. So what you need to understand is that both have a different role. When you talk about tonic control from the hypothalamus, we all talk about that always the control is usually stimulatory with the exception of prolactin. Dopamine is inhibiting prolactin and dopamine also inhibits TSH. So that is fine. But somatostatin is also an inhibitor of growth hormone. Why do we say that growth hormone is in a tonic positive secretion and not, why will you ignore somatostatin?
Somatostatin is present all the time.
Yes. So the driver of growth hormone secretion is GHRH. So if you were to decide, you have to design a human being and say that, okay, I want to control GH, how will you design him? Would you like to have continuous GHRH or continuous somatostatin?
For growth.
Yeah, so you will say, okay, continuously keep on producing growth hormone, whether you have nutrition or not, whether you have sleep or not, whether you're sick or not. So if you, let's put it a simpler way, if you have an air conditioner, you like to have it on a switched on always or a switch off always. So default mode should be switched off. So when you need it, you press it. So similarly for growth hormone, you want it when you produce it. So somatostatin is pervasive. If somatostatin goes down and GHRH pulse comes in, you have the growth hormone secretion. This is very important because otherwise you are going to waste a lot of growth hormone production when there is no growth. You have no nutrition, you will shut it off. And why it is important? Because in adverse situation, this whole GHRH will be shut off. So most of these mechanisms are developed so that you produce them when they are needed. Now then, why do you have an inhibitory production for prolactin?
It is needed only during certain
Yes, so you don't need it at all. So you will keep it in a very, very safe mode only when, and its production may be harmful. Maybe you are producing growth hormone, you may not cause that much growth, it is okay. But if you produce prolactin in a girl, you're going to cause so many problems. So prolactin therefore is completely inhibited. And once you need it, you remove the inhibition. So this is how the general control will go forward from there. Now, growth hormone is a peptide hormone, yet it is bound to a binding protein. That is an important concept to remember. In fact, GH and IGF are exceptional peptide hormones which are bound to proteins. Now, why is that? I'll talk about that a bit later. Now, that GH binding protein will then take it to the growth hormone receptor. The typical way we look at it is that this is GH, IGF-1, IGF receptor, simplistic way. Somatomedin hypothesis, which has been there for 60 years. But there are now many more pathways which are there, which are relevant. But typically we say growth hormone will act on the liver to produce IGF-1, which along with IGF-BP and acid labile substrate, a ternary complex will be formed and then it will go and act on the IGF receptor and cause growth. This is a typical scenario. The reality is not entirely true. There are endocrine, paracrine, autocrine effect of growth hormone. So growth hormone is acting independent of IGF-1. GHRH is also acting independent of growth hormone. So what you need to understand is that phenotype will differ in every situation. So how is the phenotype of GHRH receptor problem different from somebody who has a typical GHD because of GH1 deletion? So let's make it more simpler. If you compare growth hormone resistance versus growth hormone deficiency, are they similar? They are similar in the sense height is less, but what are the differences there? No, I'm talking about phenotype. So GHI versus GHD. Like?
Deficiency will have more severe phenotype.
The resistance will have more severe because usually they will be not acting at all. But they will also have some other features like coarse facies. They will have frontal bossing. They will have sparse hair. Those abnormalities will be there. Now for GHRH versus GHD, Alapan. So very important. It's been shown that those who have a GHRH problem do not develop those classical micropenis hypoglycemia. What it tells us is that It's not that it's just a simple GHRH, GH, IGF-1, IGF receptor. There are other ways these hormones are working also. Broadly, they are like a phenocopy. They will behave like a similar. Height will be less. That's what you can say. Central obesity will be there. Maybe that typical mid-facial hypoplasia will be there, but other features may be different in that regard. So now growth hormone is a large peptide. It is a single chain large peptide, 191 amino acid. It is non-glycosylated. So we have talked about glycosylated peptides like TSH, LH, FSH, and HCG. So it is non-glycosylated. What does it mean? So what does non-glycosylated will have an impact?
Short half-life.
Yes. So glycosylation is proportional to half-life. Longest half-life is for HCG. If you have that's the most, and LH, FSH, TSH are in a different. LH has the lowest half-life. Why is it important? A long-acting growth hormone is being produced is by adding a HCG moiety to the growth hormone, which is a somatogron. So if you add that HCG moiety, it increases the half-life. So very reason why the growth hormone has a very small half-life is because it is a non-glycosylated peptide. It does have a disulfide bond. So there's a single chain, but they are linked to each other. If you can see, there are disulfide bonds in 165 and in between 188. So this is a structural thing which may not be clinically that relevant. But there are other hormones which are like growth hormones. And typical of them are prolactin, of course, is classical, HCS, which is human chorionic somatomamotropin, and human growth hormone V. So placenta is a major source of growth hormone like peptides. And these are very, very important for fetal glucose metabolism. Why? So what do? They do not cause growth, but they help fetus get more glucose. So where does the fetus get the glucose from? And is it active or a passive transport? I think passive transport. So 80% of what mothers are. So if you are not happy with getting 80% of 80, that is 64, you want it to be 80, what will you do? You will increase mother's blood sugar. And how will you increase mother's blood sugar? Is by secreting these things. So in a way, it is such an interesting way that fetus are not only acting as a parasite, they are actually causing harm to the mother. That's why pregnancy develops diabetes. Why do you have gestational diabetes and all those things? So it is a evolutionary mechanism that to prevent hypoglycemia in the newborn, in the fetus, you are looking at hyperglycemia in the mother. Now that will not really cause hyperglycemia if somebody is not having enough food. But if you have already predisposed to diabetes, if somebody is having imbalanced diet, they will develop diabetes. So that was a very wonderful protective mechanism that even if mother doesn't get much to eat, the baby will increase it through these all growth hormone and all those factors and then utilize it in that regards. The other forms, now what you need to remember, that growth hormone is in multiple forms. 22 kilodalton is the major form. Why is it important? Because if you are not having a very specific assay, you will be measuring all the other types of growth hormone and you may give a false result. So the guidelines now say that your standard should be this 22 kilodalton, which you should be measuring, and that becomes absolutely important. There are other variants which I don't think are much relevant. Now, where are they produced? They are, of course, produced in the somatropes, which are one of the biggest numbers of cells. So if we talk about the whole anterior pituitary, somatropes are very big. What you're seeing is somatropes are there in the region which are more exposed to outside. What does it mean in terms of the pathophysiology of GHD? Okay, but so they will be more affected or less affected. So if there is a trauma, so if you see like this, and if you look at a chest sort of a thing, who is most protected here? In trauma or anything coming from outside, which group is most protected? So ACTH is like the queen, or you can say whatever, Raja, whatever in that regard. So it's the most centrally protected. And these growth hormone are like, they are left outside. They are like the pawns. So they are left outside and they can be damaged early. So this really diagram tells you very importantly what the body is prioritizing in terms of the overall outcome. It is going to sacrifice growth hormone. That will be the first to be affected in anything. If you talk about trauma, if you talk about radiation, if you talk about vascular insult, growth hormone deficiency will be there. In other words, if you have an acquired cortisol deficiency, acquired TSH deficiency, you should nearly assume that GH is also affected, while ACTH will be protected from that perspective. So their location is such that it makes them more prone to injury. And because of that, and they are also radio sensitive. So they are the first one to go on, which is the most radio resistant hormone in the pituitary, AVP, and within the anterior pituitary, prolactin. So that becomes important, but growth hormone will be very, very sensitive as far as the radiation is concerned. Now, what about genetics? We have discussed this in much detail in pituitary, so I'm not going to discuss too much out here. But you need to remember is that for growth hormone to form, you of course need to have a normal craniofacial development, normal development of the hypothalamus, of the rat case pouch and the adenohypophysis, neurohypophysis, development of the somatrope, and from that perspective. So problems can happen in SOX3 and HX1, which are very proximal. So you will have septo-optic dysplasia. You may have visual problems, hearing problems. All those problems can be there. LHX3 and 4, which cause the spinal problem. PITX1, PITX2 again. PROP1, which is a major regulator of growth hormone, cortisol, and TSH. POW1F1 or PIT1, which is majorly a regulator of growth hormone and TSH. And finally, growth hormone. So growth hormone deficiency can be from multiple pituitary hormone deficiency to an isolated deficiency. If you compare this to other ones like TSH, the causes of isolated deficiency are much less. They will be rarely IGF-1 or you can say TRH receptor defect, TSH beta defect. These will be the ones which are there. But GST, a lot of them are isolated also. So this is important to remember.